The wind howled low across the frozen prairie like some ancient spirit mourning its dead, sweeping over endless snowdrifts that shimmered faintly beneath the pale silver glow of the moon. And on that lonely western road where no man rode unless necessity or fate demanded it, a lone cowboy guided his weary horse along the narrow trail that wound between skeletal pines, heavy with frost, his breath steaming in the night air, his hat pulled low against the stinging gale, his coat stiff with ice, yet his eyes sharp as ever, searching the dim horizon for shelter, for danger, or perhaps for a sign that he was not the last living soul in that vast white world. His name was Cole Mercer, a drifter by reputation, a gentleman by nature, and a ghost in his own heart. For though he had seen many towns, many women, many suns rise and fall across distant ranges, he had never found the one place that felt like home, nor the one person who might call him back if ever he rode away again. And so when he spotted the faintest flickering amber glow through the swirling curtain of snow, he first assumed it to be some lantern left outside a barn, or perhaps the reflection of moonlight upon ice. But as he drew nearer, guiding his horse down the slope toward a small valley, cradled between hills of frost, he saw that it was indeed a lantern, and not merely a lantern, but a candle burning in a window, a single flame shining bravely against the darkness from within a humble log cabin whose roof sagged beneath the weight of snow, whose chimney puffed thin wisps of smoke like the last breaths of an old woman, and whose walls creaked softly in the wind like the whisper of prayer. Cole slowed his horse, curiosity stirring beneath his ribs like the first spark of fire in a cold hearth. For he was no stranger to lonely lights in lonely places, yet there was something peculiar about this glow, something tender, deliberate, almost sacred in the way it stood alone in that storm, steady and patient as though waiting for someone, perhaps, or for something long overdue. He dismounted quietly, patting his horse's neck as snowflakes clung to its mane, and he stood for a moment in silence, simply watching the golden square of light where the candle shone, and inside he saw the faint silhouette of a woman kneeling by the window, her hands clasped as though in prayer, her head bowed, her hair loose upon her shoulders, and beside her the shadow of a small child, no, not moving, not waving, not laughing, merely sitting with her, motionless, almost reverent, as though both mother and child were keeping vigil. Cole felt something tighten in his throat, something uninvited yet undeniable. For though he did not know these strangers, though he did not know their names or their story or their sorrows, he recognized the posture of grief, the stillness of remembrance, and he wondered, not aloud, for he was not a man who spoke to empty air, but inwardly, quietly, who it was they missed so dearly that they would light a candle for them each night in such a place, such a storm, such a perilous silence. He could have ridden on, he should have, perhaps. A lone widow, a child, a burning candle, such things whispered of wounds not yet healed, of losses too deep for strangers to mend. Yet Cole was not made of iron, no matter what the world believed, and though his hands bore scars and his heart bore more still, he had never been able to turn away from suffering when it sat so plainly before him. And so he approached the cabin slowly, his boots crunching in the snow, his gloved hand resting carefully on the butt of his revolver, not in threat, but in prudence, calling out just loud enough to be heard above the wind. "Ma'am, don't mean to startle you. Just a traveler seeking shelter for the night." The woman inside stirred at once, her head lifting, her silhouette shifting, and the child, yes, a girl by the size of her, pressed closer to her side. For a heartbeat, the candle flickered as though unsure whether to burn brighter or retreat into darkness, and Cole held his breath, waiting, unsure whether he would be met with welcome or with the barrel of a shotgun through the window, for in such wild country, hospitality was often reserved only for the trusted and familiar. But then the woman stood, lifting the candle from the windowsill, and came to the door, opening it just a crack, the warm glow spilling out like honey upon the snow, and Cole saw her face at last, pale but strong, lined not with age but with loss, her eyes weary yet unbroken, her lips pressed tight as though to hold back words that might betray too much. "We have little to offer," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tremble of wind that tugged at her skirts. "But we have a fire and a spare blanket. If you mean no harm, you may come in." Cole nodded, touched by the simplicity and courage of her welcome, for she did not know him. Yet she chose kindness over fear, and he stepped inside, bowing his head as he entered, the small cabin where warmth enveloped, him like an unexpected embrace, and where the scent of pine smoke and faint lavender lingered like memory. The room was modest, one bed against the far wall, patched quilts neatly folded, a small table worn smooth by use, shelves lined with jars of preserved fruit and herbs. But it was clean, carefully tended, each object placed with quiet intention, and in the center of it all burned the hearth, its flames crackling gently beneath a black iron kettle, casting soft light upon the wooden floor where a little girl sat with her legs tucked beneath her, her wide blue eyes fixed not on Cole, but on the candle her mother now placed again by the window, as though even a guest could not delay the ritual. "Thank you," Cole murmured, removing his hat, feeling suddenly too large for such a gentle space, too rough, too weather-beaten, like a storm cloud drifting into a church. "I'll sleep by the fire if you'll allow it. Won't trouble you more than that?" The woman nodded once, then turned to tend the kettle, pouring hot water into a tin cup which she handed to him without a word. Her hands were slender, calloused from work, and when his fingers brushed hers in taking the cup, he felt a strange jolt, not romantic, not yet, but something like recognition, as though his soul knew hers from some older time, some forgotten life. The little girl finally looked at him then, not with fear but with solemn curiosity, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you cold, mister?" Cole gave her a small smile, kneeling down so as not to tower. "A bit," he admitted, "but this fire helps mighty well." She nodded, satisfied, then glanced toward the candle. "Mama lights it every night," she said, not as explanation but as declaration, as fact carved into stone. "She says it's so Papa don't get lost on his way back." Cole's chest tightened again, sharper this time, like an arrow not yet pulled free. He glanced at the widow, yes, widow, for there was no denying it now, as she stood still by the window, her hand resting lightly on the sill beside the candle. Her gaze remained fixed on the flame, though he sensed she heard every word. "What's your name, little one?" he asked gently. "Rose," she replied. "And Mama is Eliza." Cole nodded. "Pleasure to meet you. Miss Rose, Miss Eliza." The woman finally turned to face him fully then, her eyes meeting his with a depth that startled him, as though she were weighing his soul and finding it neither wholly good nor wholly dangerous, but wounded as she herself was. "You may stay the night," she said simply. "But come morning the road will call you again. I do not keep company long." Cole inclined his head in respect. "Fair enough. I'll not overstay my welcome." Yet as the hours passed, and the wind roared outside like wolves in mourning, and the candle burned low upon the sill, Cole found himself unable to sleep, not for the cold nor for the hard floor, but for the question that gnawed at him like hunger. Who was this man they waited for? How long had they waited? And why, even now when logic and time would have declared him gone forever? Did the widow still light the candle each night as though her love burned, brighter than doubt itself? He watched her long after Rose had fallen asleep beside her mother on the bed, watched as Eliza sat upright, back against the wall, eyes never closing fully, as though to sleep would be to betray the one she missed. And he realized with sudden fierce certainty that he could not ride away come morning without knowing, without understanding, without offering, if not hope, then at least companionship in the silence. For he too knew what it was to lose someone to the dark, and perhaps, just perhaps, two lonely souls could stand the night better together than apart. And if you, dear listener, want to know whether Cole stays come the morning sun, whether Eliza's candle draws him closer or sends him riding farther than ever before,